What's up, and welcome into Stacking Dubs. I'm your host, Chris Chinn. Thanks for joining me on an off-season edition of Stacking Dubs. Couple games into round one of the playoffs. I just wanted to get some thoughts out there and just kind of, I always seen a little bit more of some of the teams in the playoffs and what's worked for them, just kind of the general trends of the league. I just wanted to get some of my thoughts about where it went wrong for the Warriors and what we can do to most directly get ourselves back into contention. Since right now, we've been on vacation mode for a couple weeks, and well, I'm actually heading off to Mexico tomorrow on a cruise. Maybe I'll run into some Warriors there and catch them playing around a golf or so. But let's talk about what happened to the Warriors this year, right? So we all know the Warriors just not good enough for many reasons this year. What's different between what the Warriors used to do and have been doing lately? Quite honestly, the problem is not that much is different. It's been a lot of the same recipe that the Warriors of 10 years ago followed, but now that recipe is a little bit aged, antiquated. The league has basically replicated that recipe and then expanded upon it, leaving the Warriors in the dust and basically just kind of trying the same old things and not having enough juice or firepower to execute it. So what are those things? Well, looking back at what the Warriors have done well, that the league does now. First off, they are great movement off the ball, right? Back, and even still, a lot of teams are very stagnant. Just one player dribbling around and making plays. Think about like James Harden. But that's not what the league is anymore. The Warriors prove that off-ball movement, building shooters around your entire offense, providing spacing, having four players at least that can knock down open threes or even contested threes creates the space for your primary ball handlers to attack the hoop or kick out to shooters. And that's just proven to be the most efficient style of offense. You see the league as a whole, the scoring is just up so much, as where before, it used to be a race to 100. Now it's really just a race to 115 to win the game. So the offense has really opened up because of the three-point line. Warriors were obviously light years ahead of everyone else at that point, but you see now every team can shoot and every team has learned to defend the three-point line, especially when we're talking about off-ball movement. Really, the Warriors seem to have been the last team to really learn how to guard the three-point line. And maybe it's because they never had to. They were the team shooting the threes. Teams had to figure out how to guard Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Kevin Durant at times. And while it's a tough task, you get better and you learn how defenses are a little bit better at switching off ball, staying attached to the hip. Things that the Warriors really haven't been great at and are still kind of struggling to learn on the defensive end. But that my point is that the league has learned to play around the three-point line and caught up to the Warriors on both sides of the ball there, and even past them from defending the three-point line. Other things that the Warriors were essentially famous for and really revolutionized is on the defensive side, switchable, versatile defenders, right? I look at Draymond Green, can guard 1 through 5, and most teams don't have it to that extent. But teams realize that your power forward, your small forward need to be able to guard 1 through 5, or at least hold their own, put up some resistance, because it's all about switchable defenders. Especially in the playoffs, you'll see towards the end of the games, it's an offensive team's best player will take a screen and get mismatched against a team's worst defender, and that's the matchup they're going to live with playing one-on-one. What the Warriors did is they switch everything, and now it's never too big of a mismatch. You always will say LeBron James can pick and choose, and he's attacking anyone from Klay Thompson, who used to hold his own, to Kevon Looney, Draymond Green, who could kind of hold their own. So you'd have versatile defenders. The league has done that now. And the problem for the Warriors is that they've fallen behind from their wings being athletic enough to be two-way wings that can also defend 1 through 5. Klay Thompson used to be able to defend at least 3 or 4 spots. Andrew Wiggins used to be a two-way wing, still defends all right, but not nearly there on offense. So having two-way wings has been what the Warriors used to have that they don't anymore, and what the best teams in the league now. Like look at the Celtics, look at all the teams at the top. The Thunder have good two-way wings. Just all the best teams in the NBA now. It starts at the wing spot, like the Clippers built very well with Kawhi, Paul George. We can go through it, but essentially you have to have guys that can shoot, can defend, and can play make from the wing position. And the Warriors wings can do maybe one of those three things on any given night inconsistently. So with that being said, it's clear where the upgrades need to be made positionally. How do we get there? And more so than having two-way wings, what areas and just kind of what skill sets do we need out of those wings? We're going to get into that, and then I'll kind of give you some names that we probably can't afford or get, but I'm just going to throw them out there anyways because I'm a hopeful Warriors fan. So the most direct path. Let's talk about kind of a higher level here. So mission number one is to compete within Steph Curry's title window, right? Steph Curry, 2 to 3 more years of play, probably at most, where he can be the number one or even a 1B player on a championship team. You can argue that, but I still believe Steph Curry can definitely still be the best player on a championship team. So if that's the case, we cannot waste that window unless you have some potential superstar player that could be a top 5, 10 player in the league. I don't know if Jonathan Kuminga is that. And because of that, and because Kuminga's ceiling, in my opinion, is an all-star, but not a superstar, I think he has to be made available, and you have to take looks at what you can get for Kuminga. I love Jonathan Kuminga. I like him more than probably anyone else, but I also like Steph Curry, and it would be unfair to this dynasty or what lack thereof is of the dynasty left to not make one more swing at a championship. So by that logic, Jonathan Kuminga becomes a possible trade piece to me. With that being said, the problem is his salary isn't enough to attach, where you would have to attach somebody else to make it work to trade for an all-star and the salary you get back. Only player that really makes sense is Andrew Wiggins, his $25 million. The problem is most teams are going to see Wiggins as a negative asset at that contract, so you're really not getting any value by including him in that trade. He's still a useful player. I still like him as a defensive wing, and he's definitely a good depth piece at the least for the Warriors. The problem is you have to get that salary off the books. And because of that, if you're going to trade Kuminga, I think it pretty much means you also have to attach your only other small forward, which would be Wiggins, which leaves a huge hole at the 3, hole defensively, a hole from a scoring perspective, and a hole from an athleticism perspective at that 3/4 spot. So that's where we're going to start, right? I think that it all starts with putting Kuminga on the table. Wiggins must most likely be attached to that, and then you have picks you can use. I guess Moody might have some value there, but he's your only other possible athletic wing to include there. So I don't really know unless you want to attach Podziemski or TJD somehow, but I think they're of more value to us than in a trade. So let's call it JK, Wiggins, and picks, and let's go from there. Okay, before we can get to what that gets you potentially, let's identify what skill sets and just kind of what we're looking for in a potential all-star running mate with Steph Curry in a trade like that. Let me back up. Let's also assume that we're going to re-sign Klay Thompson. I won't get into it too much, but letting Klay just walk in free agency, it doesn't really do that much for us. It's not like letting Klay walk opens up $20-25 million worth of salary that we can just go buy somebody. We're already at the cap and over it. So Klay Thompson, it really just saves the organization money. Sure, there's value in that, but it doesn't really do much. So let's assume we're signing Klay back at a reasonable deal. Okay, so areas that we would need, obviously, first and foremost, scoring. We need someone that can win one-on-one matchups, especially if it's a switched matchup. Basically, you don't have Anunoby or Michael Bridges on you, but you get switched to a smaller guard or even the centers on you. You have to be able to exploit that and score in mismatches. more so than that, if you can score in mismatches, that means you invite help, right? That second defender is shading over, which creates movement, which creates potential playmaking opportunities to get your shooters open. So you need to be able to pass. You need to be able to see the floor, and you need to be able to play make. It's the problem with Kuminga. It's the problem with Wiggins. It's the problem with Klay Thompson, our arguably second, third, and fourth best scorers. None of them none of them really win one-on-one to begin with, except maybe Kuminga. But most importantly, none of them can pass when the help does come. So it doesn't really open up the offense for anyone else, especially not Steph Curry, which is what we need as he ages. So I need someone that can command that double team and probably just has the length and the height to be able to see the floor and the experience to make that pass. It's really the difference if you're looking back at the Warriors historically between like Wiggins and Iguodala, right? Both really good defenders, both, mid scorers. Wiggins and his prime a little bit better scorer than Iggy and a little bit better shooter. But the difference really why Iguodala would be a better fit is because he could pass, right? He's a connector. Warriors need more connectors in that offense. Iguodala doesn't demand a double team, but he can still pass. Give me somebody who can command that double team, LeBron James, and can pass out of it. Now the geometry, the shape of the offense changes where the defense is always one step behind, right? If you give it to Steph, well, now help comes to Steph, and this number two, whoever it is, has room to operate and score like Kevin Durant used to. Now Kevin Durant has the ball at the three. Defenses suck in there because you can't guard Kevin Durant one-on-one, and now you get open shooters. So it's really just that lack of a number two, which has killed the Warriors, but also gives me hope that if you can just kind of flip the equation a little bit, and now that offense really does become at an advantage wherever the ball's hopping to. So maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe there's bigger problems. It's not always just how much talent you can acquire, but which mismatches you can create. Okay, and then lastly, what we would need in the absence of trading away Kuminga, trading away Wiggins, is they have to be a two-way wing, which means they have to be able to play defense. You have to be able to guard an all-star caliber player. We'll call it 1 through 5, maybe 1 through 4 if we're talking about adding a wing. You have to be able to at least put up resistance and be a above average defender, if not a plus defender. I mean, we're not going to get a superstar, so we'll settle for above average defender. And with that comes rebounding and just a little bit of athleticism and physicality to begin with. If you can give me any rim protection, we could always use more rim protection, kind of helping the helper when Draymond vacates to help. Now someone needs to be able to step in and block shots on the backside. Kuminga has the athleticism to be a great shot blocker. His timing, his defensive IQ isn't quite good enough to anticipate that. That's why he doesn't get a block a game. I need someone who's going to get me a block a game. Okay, so we've identified what we need. We've identified what we have to get there. What the big question is what are other teams going to be asking from us, and what are they willing to part with? So let me just give you my list. I'm just going to kind of go from, my biggest, highest pie in the sky, no brainer for us to pursue, which we just have no chance at, all the way down to guys we might be able to get, but probably don't put us into contention enough. So starting off, Giannis Antetokounmpo. I don't need to really go into that anymore. Then if we can get Antetokounmpo, basically without having to give up Steph Curry, then you just go make it happen. Probably not going to happen, but the Bucks a little kind of reeling right now. Giannis is hurt, but the Bucks are reeling. They weren't great all year, and Giannis has really wanted to play with Curry, it sounds like, for the longest time. So maybe he wants to get to California. Who knows? All right, make that one happen. Number two, we can kind of interchange them. It's a little bit different, but talent-wise, they provide similar. It's LeBron and it's Kevin Durant. If we're sticking to the logic of number one main objective is just to compete over the next 2 years and give Curry one more shot, then the age of LeBron being almost 40, he probably has 2 more years left. Just align them, make a run at it, bring in LeBron. It'll cost you Kuminga. It'll probably cost you Wiggins too, and maybe picks. I don't know what. It depends on his leverage with the Lakers. They might just hit the rebuild. So you could go get LeBron and make a run at it. Does he put you over the top? Maybe, but he does fit everything that we're looking for in a player. Obviously, in his prime, he does everything well. Even at his age now, he does everything well. The team would be old. The team would not be a very energetic regular season team, but get that team to the playoffs and, a Steph Curry, LeBron, Clay, Dre team with a few other pieces around. You attract some role players. That team can compete, and LeBron fills all those holes. Kevin Durant, very similar. He doesn't quite give you the playmaking that I'm looking for that LeBron gives you. So that's why I have LeBron a little higher on my wish list. But that being said, if Kevin Durant decided to come back to the Bay, I'd probably get on board with that. Honestly, obstacle number one is I just don't know if his relationship with Draymond Green has healed enough, nor will it ever. I don't know. They used to be boys, and then obviously he left in part, I would assume, due to Draymond Green. You heard Draymond talk about it this year, basically, calling KD different names. I won't repeat them. And how he wouldn't win, or that we would win before Kevin Durant. So it sounds like there's still a little bit of animosity there. I don't know if they would coexist, but Kevin Durant, come on back. I'd be curious to know if that Warriors core is still, unfair and just too good for the league. Or has the league caught up and the Warriors aged enough where it's actually a very interesting team and a competitive team, but who knows if it's over the top. So if the Suns continue to get beat down by the Wolves, who I'm rooting for, maybe KD asks out, who knows where that guy lands. Kind of more mid-tier here, so a little bit younger, not younger, but younger than LeBron and KD, but not quite as talented at their peak. So Brandon Ingram would be an interesting option. He actually fills a lot of everything I said. He's always been kind of a 1B scorer in the kind of 23-point range, which is, perfect and reasonable. He can pass. He averages between 5 and 6 assists per game. He can command that double team. He can get to that mid range, and then he can obviously pass out of it. He can get to the free throw line. He gives you length rebounding. He gives you decent defense. I actually really like Ingram as a fit for the Warriors. And he makes us competitive. I don't know. The Pelicans might not be willing to part with him, and they're kind of building around him. So I don't know what it would take, but that is probably honestly my target A that would be within reason. Somehow if Jimmy Butler and the Heat decide, hey, we're just gonna hit a reset, we're not good enough, and we just want to get younger, maybe a Jimmy Butler would fit pretty well. Paul George fits, although he's a free agent, and it's a really hard way. The Warriors would struggle to obtain a free agent. We almost have to trade for somebody. We can't just sign using our money. We're over the cap as it is, so it would have to be a sign and trade, which then handcuffs us on other moves we can make. But Paul George, I like Paul George. He fits fairly well with what we're doing. I don't know if he puts us over the top enough. But again, that could be a reasonable one. I don't think that's really an option being a free agent. Moving on to kind of younger players, they're not quite two-way wings, but they give you stuff that we're looking for with and lacking in others. So like a Donovan Mitchell, the Cavs decide that, hey, this isn't really working. He gives you the scoring you're looking for, but I think he's only 6'4". We're just missing a ton of size. We're missing a ton of defense in that. Mitchell is good, and he gives us a different wrinkle there. I don't think it's enough. But for the right price and the right deal, maybe if it was just Kuminga for Mitchell straight up, the salaries wouldn't work. But anyways, maybe if there, I don't know if this is possible, guys, but if it was possible to re-sign Chris Paul and then trade that contract, I think you can sign and trade and do that, but I'm not exactly sure if that works to attach to Kuminga, because that would be better than having to attach Wiggins and the salary. In the same breath as Mitchell, Zach LaVine, similar contracts. They're both maxed out, both good offensive players, both defensively lacking. That's a pretty comparable get. DeJounte Murray, not quite as good, but better defensively than those guys. He's just kind of a above average across the board, but we talked about it at the trade deadline. I don't think he puts us over the top, but it's a piece. I don't think he's available. Michael Bridges, he gives you obviously defensively what you're looking for, and he's a good offensive player too. I think the price would be too much on him, but if the Warriors are willing to part with all the pieces, you might be able to go get Bridges. and that's an interesting team to say the least. And then lastly, I included a couple of kind of bigs here, just if you want to go the stretch 5, stretch 4 routes, and you'd have other holes, but going after like a Lowry Markkanen or a Karl Anthony Towns, it'd be interesting. Again, these are just kind of just names, and if one of these guys becomes available, you never know what happens in the playoffs. Guys get disgruntled or just want out or are made available. Then you just acquire them and you build around what you can get elsewhere around them. So those are my targets. If we can land any of those guys, you will see a happy dance from me. But I guess it all starts with me accepting the fact that I might be able to trade Jonathan Kuminga now, if it means we take another stab at the championship. If nothing gets us into contention, then I guess you're just holding Kuminga. You're riding it out with the veterans as they ride off into the sunset, and you're hoping Kuminga emerges by, age 24, 25, and you're kind of going from there. All right, guys. Well, it's off to Mexico for me. I hope you guys have some good vacations planned. I'll be back in probably a week or two to kind of check back in with you, maybe after the first round of games, and we'll see how the league has evolved. But thanks for digesting a little bit of Warriors. I know it's been hard to watch the playoffs without the Warriors in it, so this will have to get you by. So thank you guys for listening. Until next time, I've been your host, Chris Chinn, and the next time I will say peace, love, and stacking dubs.